Great to have you on first and foremost, but you look at the Avalanche organization across the league. I do think it's one of those pinnacle organizations. Can you draw any similarities to like this current Leafs team, to that Avs team, how they finally pushed through a couple years ago? It obviously helps when you have like the likes of McKinnon, Rantanen,
Yeah.
Makar, but can you draw any similarities? We're just trying to get to that conversation one day. It could
Yeah.
actually happen here, you know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was. I can draw a lot of similarities, and I look at the Avs a few years ago, and they hadn't won or hadn't gotten past the second round, and it was almost like they had to learn to win. Right? You lose so many times, you have your heart broken so many times, and it's they learned to win. They got through St. Louis. Darren Helm scored that the game, the game winner with five, or the series clincher with 5 seconds left in Game 6 in St. Louis, and that seemed to be just kind of this, just this weight off their shoulders. And from there on, I mean, they go up against Edmonton. It was a hard fought series. They end up sweeping Edmonton, and I just think that it's weird to say, but sometimes you have to learn to win. And I always compared the Avs to the previous Tampa teams that always seemed to be so good, and then they finally broke through. And obviously, a number of cups later, that's what it felt like to me. And knowing John Cooper and knowing some of the guys that worked in the Tampa organization and played in the Tampa organization, it just felt like that for the Avs. And I can absolutely see a lot of similarities between the Avs and the current Leafs.
And being a Maple Leaf and a defenseman for them and playing for multiple organizations, what can you tell us from your perspective on what that's like and some of the challenges that arise from being in that position? And does that make it so much harder to win? Like, everyone's trying to figure out why these guys haven't won in so many years. And I mean, I've been there to a certain degree, and I want to know your perspective from being a defenseman on the Maple Leafs.
Well, I mean, yeah, and listen, you and I both know that playing in Toronto is arguably, it's the hardest place to play because you have so many eyes on you. The microscope is constantly on you, and if you don't make it to where the expectations are set, then it's a dissection all summer. All off season. And so, it is, it's tough. And being a defenseman for the Leafs, I mean, when you're winning, it is the best place to play in the world. And if you are not successful, then it is the hardest place to play in the world. And, I think, you looking back, and we had that series against Boston, Game 7 had that game won, I would say, and end up losing that, and like going and playing in Boston then after that to finish my career for a year and a half. I mean, it's just amazing just how many people still want to talk about that or wanted to talk about that. And there's so many eyes on you. There's the hopes of so many fans. And all you want to do is win to kind of reward all these people for their love and sacrifice for so many years. So it's it sometimes it makes it harder, is what I would say, because you have these expectations and you have just I don't want to say hopes and dreams, but the hopes and dreams of so many people. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. So
I think John Klingberg knows exactly what you mean and feel. Just they chewed him up, they spit him out in this market. It's happened to the best defensemen, some of the worst as well. And certainly your conversation about Game 7, we had Clarkie MacArthur on a couple months back, and we just don't like to talk about that game and that day on this show. So we're going to keep it that way. I did want you to bring up, it was such an interesting moment, and I have the seat in the background here from the Winter Classic. By the way, the coldest fucking day of my life, the dumbest decision. I didn't bring the proper attire, didn't bring the proper boots to that game. Couldn't piss anywhere. Drank so much, it was a joke. Yeah. It was so cold. But that was a day you'll always remember in infamy because you were traded in warm-up. What do you remember about that?
Oh man, had to bring that up, hey?
Sorry, buddy.
No, that's all right. Honestly, it's like my most famous moment, apparently. So actually, this picture, I think that's Pierre Maguire. I already knew that I was possibly getting traded. Pierre told me I've had a great career, and he, obviously he knew about the trade that was coming. But what I will say is they told me before warm-up that there was a trade in place. It hadn't been fully approved. And I said, well, I don't care. I'm going out for warm-up. This is whatever. So I line up on the red line. I'm stretching. And Kyle Quincy's a good buddy of mine. Drew Miller's a good buddy of mine. And they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, I just got traded. They're like, wait, what? And so there's a picture of me walking off the ice, and we both walk up the tunnel. The Wings and the Leafs walk up the tunnel together, and then you split to the locker rooms. And Drew Miller had his arm around me, and somebody sent me that picture because I had just gotten traded. And it's funny. It's like you look back, and people love bringing that up because it's just such a funny thing. But I mean, it was an awesome warm up. I had a great time, and Graham Dillette was actually in Vail last week, and he was at that game. And we were talking about that. And same thing. He's like, I was so cold.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I got traded. I stood there, watched the whole game, and then I got on the equipment truck and rode to the airport with Jim Hughes and the equipment guys, and then I got on a flight to DC to meet the Hurricanes to play the Capitals the next day. So it's crazy, like the little things you remember from those days. But yeah, it was. I mean, something that I guess, I'll still be answering questions about 20 years from now, I'm sure.
Did you get a chance to get into an outdoor game after that or no?
I played in an outdoor game in college, Michigan State, Michigan, but I never actually played in an outdoor game in the NHL after that. The year after I retired, Boston played Chicago in South Bend, Indiana, which would have been a cool one to be a part of, being from Indiana, but never actually got into an outdoor game. Had a heck of a warm up though in Ann Arbor.
Oh, you killed, dude. You were looping around there, man. I loved it. High stepping and all. So
yeah.
that's the one thing I remember. I also remember it took 6 hours to play that game. So buddy, you didn't miss much. Okay.
Yeah. No, it was, unfortunately I was standing up in the tunnel the whole time watching it until the equipment truck took me to the airport. So I had the worst part. I didn't get to actually sweat. I just stood in the tunnel and hung out. Dillette was sitting like 3 rows from the tunnel, and he and I were talking the entire game. It was crazy how that works.
Infamous
Weyburn,
story, and of course Tyler Bozak scores.
Yeah.
Weyburn, Saskatchewan boy Graham Dillette. If he's cold, it's cold out there.
Oh yeah, he was freezing. He was wearing a Flames jersey too, and it just I was shaking my head at him the whole time.
Brutal.
I think his yardage book is a Flames. It's got a Flames logo on it too. What a beauty!
It is.
I just wanted to ask you too about this Maple Leafs team. I'm not sure how much you're tracking them. Of course, you're covering the Avs. The Avs in town to take on the Leafs this weekend. But what do you make of the whole core four? Obviously, a lot's changed since you were a Leaf, John, and they're building something here, and they're trying to win a Stanley Cup still. I mean, the focus is still there. But what do you make of those four guys? Do you think it's possible to win with them?
I mean, I think so. I mean, in the end, it's how do you perform in the playoffs, right? And you have to have the superstars, but you also have to have that secondary support scoring. And that's, I look back once again to the ads a couple of years ago, and you have the McKinnons and Nichushkin stepping up and doing what he's done since he's come to Colorado, and the Rantanens, and you end up with guys like Lekin and things like, players like that. I think the core four in Toronto, obviously they're extremely skilled and they're amazing players with, Austin Matthews leading the way, but, the Nylander signing, I mean, he's played so well over the last few years. And I think that, those guys, if they can, carry the water in the playoffs and have some support from that secondary scoring, we always say first and second liners get you to the playoffs, third and fourth liners win you series, right? If you can have your third and fourth liners scoring big goals, they're going to win you series. And if your defenseman can chip in here and there, and the big one for the Avs, I think, when they won a couple years ago was Cale Makar and that the defense that how they played Taves and Makar. You had Byram and Manson, and then you had Jack Johnson. Sam Girard got hurt, but you had these guys that just they played just such a swarming style. And so you had that ability to chip in from the back end. You had the third and fourth liners chipping in. Like I said, Darren Helm scored the series clincher against St. Louis. And so your big guys, if they can hold serve against the other team's big guys, and you can get that support from your third and fourth line guys, your second line guys, then that's how you win series. And so, obviously Toronto has the skill and that core four, and I don't see them not being able to hold serve against anybody. That's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like every team that wins the Stanley Cup or goes on a deep run has got those depth guys that just step up and out of the realm and carry that team in those ways and round it off to a point where they're a big piece of what makes it go deep. And we're talking about Corey Perry right now as he prepares to possibly enter the league again. What would be your thoughts on being on a team or a fan of a team where you pick that guy up and pick him up for cheap and put him in your bottom six?
Well, I think that I think there's probably not going to be any shortage of people trying to add him to their lineup. He's had success. He's obviously won a Stanley Cup. He's been into multiple Cup finals recently, and so he's a guy like I heard you talking before I jumped on. Just he drags people into the fight, and that's what you want. You want guys like that. You want guys that are gonna make a difference, especially at crunch time. And he's battle proven, and a guy that he can add to your team. And so ultimately, are there going to be teams that want to add him? For sure. I could see the Leafs wanting to do that. I could see a number of teams wanting to do that. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. With everything that's gone on this year, it'll be really interesting to see just kind of how everything shakes out. But, once again, a guy that you would want on your team in playoffs. Like I played with Brad Marchand. I hated playing against him, but loved playing with him and loved having him on my team. And he's the same type of guy, right? Drags you into the fight, and you love playing with those guys.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.